All right. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining. So I'm going ahead and call this meeting to order. Our ceremonial quote is predicting rain doesn't count, building arcs does. And I'm going to go ahead and do a roll call. Okay, great. So sorry, let me start my video real quick. We're not. All right, so the people that I see listed, I'm just going to go down the list. So Mary Vigil, if you could unmute yourself. This to confirm that people can hear and participate fully. All right, I'll have to come back to her. Sharon Coco.
Present.
Thank you. Trustee Jones.
Here.
Thank you. Trustee Crosby.
I'm here.
Thank you. Liz Fisher.
Here.
Thank you. Judy Nye.
Here.
Thank you. Malia Santos.
Here.
Thank you. And let me see, Brad Promes.
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you. And you're a member of staff?
Staff.
Got it. Thanks. Lisa Zamora. I think
Luis is here because he's streaming.
Great. Got it. And Mary Vigil.
Here.
Thanks. Henry Fung.
Here.
I cannot identify this person. I'm asking you to unmute. Okay, I'll have to move on. And then Pon, as I noted,
Yes, I'm here.
Got it. And I'm asking another person to identify themselves.
Gerald, can you identify yourself?
Oh, I'm sorry, Gerald Green.
Thanks. And then could the person on the Pixel 2 XL identify themselves?
Antonio, it's Brian Kilgore.
Thank you. Let me rename you. Okay. And then, hi, I don't know your name. Let me, without knowing your, okay, so actually real quick, the reason why I'm struggling is because people need to go to the participants tab. Oh, great. Participants tab at the bottom, or the button. Pull that up, then go to the top name that you see. Go to more, and there should be a rename. And if you could rename yourselves, I would appreciate it. I've gone ahead and renamed some of you. And let me know if anybody's having any trouble, just identify yourselves and I will happily rename you.
Well, we have a lot of Kelly.
Right. Yeah, it just has to do with, like, sometimes when a certain personal is sent out, I believe that ends up having that person be everybody. Okay, great. I think we have everybody identified now. All right. And
Antonio, yes. It made
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
When you were saying how to rename, the sound went wonky, and right now I'm down as Kelly.
No worries.
Now it's changed again. Thank you.
Okay, so I am going to, so we've gone through the roll call. I think I'm missing some people. So Brian Gebhardt,
Here.
thank you. Gerald Green has identified himself. Eric, could you identify yourself?
Here.
Okay, thanks. Connie Tung,
Here.
thank you. I believe that's Kelly, and that should be everybody. Okay, great. And now we can go ahead and adopt the agenda. Before doing so, I would request that we delete the solar panel installation update. The parties were not able to attend. And if we could designate that time to the ventilation presentation, I expect to have that be a fulsome discussion. So with those amendments, if I could entertain a motion to adopt the agenda as amended.
I move to adopt the agenda as amended.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I second.
Thank you very much. So now if I could ask people to, I guess I should lead by example and try to find a virtual background. I would ask people to please raise your hand virtually, or raise your hand in real life. But some, let me see, there's like Henry, are you able to turn on video, or will you have to voice vote? Okay, cool. So all in favor of adopting the agenda as amended, please raise your hands. Only voting members, please. All right, please put your hands down. All opposed? All right, great. We can go ahead and move to the next item, which is the approval of the minutes/notes. As a huge favor to me, I've asked Brian Kilgore to draft the notes from the May 1st, 2019 meeting, which is obviously a while back. That should complete all of the outstanding minutes and notes. So if you go to the website, they should all be filled in once we adopt this, this set of minutes. So if I could entertain a motion.
I move to adopt the May 1st minutes.
And would that be plus the August 5th minutes as well?
I was curious because the attachment had the September 1st minutes, not the August 5th minutes. So
You're right. My apologies. The agenda should, yeah, that prong should read September 2nd.
oh, okay. Then I move to approve the minutes for May 1st and September 2nd.
Thank you so much. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Thanks. So if you could raise your hands, all in favor, please raise your hands. Okay, please put them down. All opposed? All right, the ayes have it. And we can go ahead and look at oral communications. So let me see if there are any oral communications. Just one second. Okay, there are not. I did receive for a brief time, the applications were going to me to the FAC inbox, but we have now moved the application to be a virtual process, which Kelly will talk about shortly. So that takes us to the ventilation part of this agenda. I have asked Brian to step in during this part of the meeting because I have another volunteer FUSD meeting to attend to, and I will be back within a half hour. So thank you very much, Brian, for taking over.
You're welcome. All right. Well, we should move on to the ventilation presentation from MNO.
So I have with us this evening our excuse me, Brad Pomes, who is our facilities HVAC guru. And he has been brought here to share with you all of the things that currently FUSD is doing in preparation for meeting the COVID-19 requirements as well as the reopening of our facilities. So I'm going to turn it over to Brad and let him share with you exactly what it is that he's doing and he and his team are doing.
Thank you, Kelly. I've got a list of items that we're going to do as part of COVID-19. This was a guidance on ventilation in school buildings during COVID-19, and it was issued through Alameda County Healthcare Services Agency. One of the first acts that we'll do is thoroughly clean and disinfect all HVAC systems. One of the second things is staff will adjust the systems to bring in as much outside fresh air into our spaces as allowable by the air handling unit. Staff will use reliable web-based data for pollution information and make adjustments as suggested by the Bay Area Air Quality Management District. I apologize, I'm a little nervous. Staff will maintain indoor temperatures at 74 degrees on an average to avoid cold or low temperatures as suggested by the World Health Organization. On-demand control ventilation systems will be disabled wherever possible. We are going to increase filtration levels to the highest minimum, excuse me, this is written incorrectly, I think. To the highest level allowable, which currently right now we are at a MERV 9. We're looking to go to a MERV 11. And reasoning behind that is if we go any higher than that, it's damage to our equipment. We will have units running 24/7 wherever possible. Filters will be replaced currently now at twice a year. We're looking to move that to 4 times a year, which is kind of district standard. Natural ventilation. None of our buildings really have the capability of natural ventilation. We have very few even to have operable open windows, except some of our older elementary schools. Supplemental equipment. Mechanical exhaust fans are not recommended to be used due to the possibility of damage to our systems. In isolated spaces, we're looking into staff to purchase and placement of the portable air cleaners with HEPA filters in the nurse's office at all sites. Staff will also purchase 20 of these units to be used in classrooms or other areas where an exposure has been reported. Staff will be disinfecting all rooms every 24 hours. Staff will monitor airnow.gov for air quality information and follow their recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad. So what he has just described to you are the process and procedures that we in facilities and maintenance and operations are adopting as our standard operating procedures. And so there's training that is actually ongoing right now with our staff, as well as educational workshops that the managers and directors and all of the administrative team is going through to understand what in terms of performance requirements are that we would have to make adjustments for to accommodate all of these changes. The other thing that's occurring too is that we're looking at the cost impact of what these things are going to be. And I know that that's always the first question in everybody's mind is like, hey, how much is all this going to cost? We know it's going to be expensive. We are in the process of compiling that information and should be able to report out to you all sometime next month, because as we've been coming back to work and, staff has just returned roughly within the last month at about 50%. And so we are now starting to see that folks have been in the buildings and we've started to, kind of crank up the engine, so to speak, to really start to monitor and see how the performance of the facilities are. And so we are analyzing on a campus by campus basis of what the needs will be. And so when we finish that, then we'll be able to report back to you guys, hey, we've got 25 schools that, don't meet these requirements, or we need additional modifications and here's what the cost is going to be. So those are some of the things that we're working collectively on M&O and facility side to take care of to address this. And we wanted to open up to any questions that you all may have for Brad with specifics on HVAC and ventilation.
Thank you, Brad. Thank you, Kelly, for the information. Raise your hand if you have questions. I see Trustee Jones, you have a question. Your hand's raised.
Yes, I have the documentation from Alameda County Healthcare Services Agency that I believe we're using, given what Brad went through. And Brad, I heard you say that we're going to be upgrading where we can to MERV 9, but the documentation, I'm just reading here, they recommend a minimum of MERV 13 and 14 or higher is preferred if the equipment can accommodate pressure drop. So given that you said that we're only upgrading to MERV 9, I take that to mean that our equipment can't handle the higher MERV filtration levels. Is that correct?
Yeah, you'd make a correct statement there. I may have goofed. We are currently at 9 now and looking to go to 11. And we're going to spot test areas throughout the district and find out if that's possible. And it is due to the air drop.
Okay, so my question is, you know, obviously, if that's all our equipment can handle to go up to 11, that's all we can handle. But with the recommendation being a minimum of 13 or 14 or higher is even preferred, what does that mean for us in terms of safety? Are we going to be, what is the actual difference in terms of what a MERV 11 can filter versus a MERV 14?
Well, we're not a HEPA until we're 13. I don't know exactly what the difference in filtration is, to be quite honest with you. I do know that when we reached out to our filter manufacturer, that's where we came up with our guidelines now, as far as where we were currently at and what we believe proposed that we'll be able to use.
Okay, and I'm just assuming it's cost prohibitive to try to upgrade systems to be able to accommodate the higher filtration. That's not a fiscally possible. Is that correct?
Yeah, that would be correct.
Okay, thank you.
Well, thank you.
Do we have any other questions?
I take that as a no.
Trustee Jones.
Yeah, since nobody else raised their hand, I guess, so you know, I'm glad that we're referring to this document with those standards, because to at least try to meet them. Because today the Alameda County Office of Education released their checklist, which is posted on their website. So this is a public document. And of the 3 pages of guidance, there is one sentence, one line about ventilation. And we all, I hope, have been made aware that the CDC finally reversed their reversal of putting up information that COVID is airborne. And I just want people to know what ACOE has to say. This is the one line about ventilation. Modifications will be, this is a checklist, modifications will be made to increase the flow of fresh outdoor air within your school buildings. That's it. That's what it says. What modification means, I don't know. Does that mean I can assign students to take 5-minute shifts standing at the door, opening and closing it to increase airflow into a classroom? I don't know. Does it mean that we have to upgrade all of our filtration systems to their maximum potential? I don't know. There's no definition of modifications about what that means to increase the flow of fresh outdoor air within your school buildings. So this is what schools in Alameda County are operating with current guidance. And the frustration you hear in my voice is not directed at any of the people here, but it's frustrating.
Well, Trustee Jones, if I might just add to that, we are fully aware that those standards fall short of what we as a district, of course, would want for our members and our constituents and students. And so one of the things that we are looking at are, and I don't know if you're familiar with CHIPS, which is the Healthy Schools Initiative and standards, and those actual air standards or airflow standards are probably some of the highest in the industry in terms of requirements for fresh air and ventilation and things like that, and meeting the ASHRAE standards. And so we are actually looking at, and I can only speak for our new projects because that's where we have the ability to make these very drastic and sweeping changes. We are incorporating these new requirements into the projects. And so if nothing else, our new middle schools will of course meet and perform to those standards that we're expected to adhere to. But we are definitely going to have to look at how we can accomplish from a financial perspective all these modifications for all of our other facilities. And one of the things that we've been talking with M&O about is looking at the areas that we can modify by switching out windows or fixing doors so that we have, if it is a closed campus and you have pressure issues with doors opening and closing, making sure that those things are functioning at their optimum performance so that we're not creating a situation where we don't have proper airflow for the systems that we have in place. So we're doing the best that we can with what we've got, but we definitely are aware that we need to do more. But it always comes down to, what do they say? You have champagne taste with beer money. So, we're going to do the best we can with our beer money. So.
Yes, Liz.
Yes. Obviously, just as a homeowner with the recent smoke in the air, the first thing I want to do is go out and get an air filter for various rooms in the house. Portable units can be purchased. Is this an opportunity for parents to support their teachers in their classrooms with the purchase of some portable units that could be added to the classroom?
Brad, did you want to kind of take a stab at that, or do you want me to answer that one?
I'll let you answer that one, Kelly.
Okay.
Can't hear you.
Oh, we just
Sorry
lost you.
about that. So we've talked about this internally at the district, and so it's a great idea, and I think that it is wonderful that we can have our parents support our teachers. The problem that comes into play for us as a district and us being able to support the facilities we run is that if you have too many facilities having too many different types of devices that they bring into the classroom and they do a power drawdown on the facility, it's going to cause power outages, it's going to cause malfunctions to other systems. And so we're not really recommending that. And so one of the things that we're looking at is looking at the commercial products that are out there that would be able to be a portable unit that we could provide to the district sites that would not impact our current systems and also not have such a power draw that we would basically cause all of our systems to fail. And so that's an analysis that we're doing right now with some consultants that we hired. And so I don't have an answer for you. I think that it's a good idea in the sense that you do want to supplement and support, but we don't necessarily want you guys to do that yet until we come up with a list of alternatives that we can actually implement and be able to service. Because the other thing that's going to happen everybody, when it gets cold, everybody brings their heaters in and they stick them under their desk, and then all of a sudden everything blows up and everybody's like, oh my God, I don't have any power. We don't want that happening at the school sites with the students on site, because then our staff becomes taxed and our resources are already limited. And if there's a device that's brought in that we're unfamiliar with, then that means that we can't service it and we can't provide the support that's necessary. So we're just cautioning folks right now, just hold on, let us get our ducks in a row and put together a plan. And then we can come back to you guys and let you guys know exactly what it is that we could ask for assistance with.
Thank you very much.
Are there any other questions? All right. Well, I'll echo what I heard. This is really uncharted territories, and thank you, Brad. Thank you, Kelly, for helping figure out how we're going to keep our students safe as possible. With that, we can move on to the next item, which is a staff update. There are several parts to the update, so I propose we'll take each in order and take comment at each part, starting with the application process update, or after each part.
So for staff updates, Antonia and I have been busy this past 2 weeks, to say the least. We have actually worked with the superintendent's office to take the online application for the Facilities Advisory Committee and actually make it an online form. It was brought to my attention that I guess several people have been applying and sending their applications in, but it's kind of like going into a black hole because, one, we don't have folks always capturing mail on a daily basis. And then if by chance, if it's not addressed correctly, it kind of goes into a box of, we don't know what to do with and hope you look in it. So we were able over the last week to make the modifications to the application that the board had recommended with regard to language regarding families and multiple committee participation, and also taking the actual application for FAC, putting it on the website and making it an online fillable form that while you're online, you can actually fill all your information in and actually submit it. And it comes to the FAC email. It also comes to myself, and then it also goes to the superintendent's office. So it actually touches in 3 places now versus just one mail or fax that it originally was before. So that process has been updated, and so far so good. We've received, I believe, 3 or 4 applications via online so far. And I believe Antonio is, we're going to review those, and you guys as a committee can have a discussion and figure out, who's going to be interviewed or reviewed and approved. But that is the update for the application process. The other thing too is in the process of FAC updating, we had discussions with the board secretary earlier this week. And so she's also looking to consolidate the application so that there's like a universal form for all committees to be able to apply online and actually have a centrally located sort of warehouse online that they can go in, apply, and then those applications be distributed to the appropriate committees. So this has turned into a really good thing, and hopefully will provide forward motion for some of the other committees as well that will offer support to other things that go on in the district. So are there any questions so far on the application process that I've discussed? Yes, Liz. Oh, okay. Okay. Moving on to the next item in the staff update is the Long-Range Facilities Master Plan RFP. So myself and Gerald and the rest of our team have been working over the summer to actually create a request for proposal for the Long-Range Facilities Master Plan update. And so we have successfully completed that. The solicitations went out. Gerald, I think, has it been 2 or 3 weeks ago that they went out? And we have since received, I believe, 6 responses from firms within our current approved pool of consultants that we are now going to go ahead and start interviewing and making a determination of who can then be looked at to do an evaluation or update of our long range facilities master plan. So that is going to occur, I believe I have interviews tomorrow, and we're going to complete our review of all of the proposals. And it is a 5-person committee that's comprised of myself, Marcus Battle. I believe there is a CSEA member, and I believe there is a faculty member and the program management team. So we have, and also a person from our procurement department. So Lelaine Cruz is also on that committee. So we're going to review and evaluate and come up with a recommendation to the board, and have that prepared for hopefully getting it on the agenda in November for an approval for us to go ahead and go into negotiations to begin that process the first part of January 2021. So that's kind of where we are with that. And part of the reason that it has taken so long in us getting this RFP out is that we really went through the previous long range facilities master plan and looked at what the intended scope of work was, and where we found that there were holes or incomplete descriptions of things, we actually really fine-tuned that and added a lot more information that we feel that we need. And then also all of the requirements as it relates to COVID-19 had to be incorporated into what our facilities, in terms of what we're looking for and how we want to move forward. So we spent a significant amount of time making sure that that was addressed, and so we're hoping that we were successful in our planning of doing that. So, are there any questions on long range facility master plan RFP? Yes, Michelle.
Well, just with the little committee that you've got set up for interviewing, I was just concerned why SEIU isn't represented on that, since as far as long range planning and building operations and grounds and all that falls under SEIU.
Well, I'll have to look back and see, but I know that we had limited it to just 5 people, but there are multiple groups of people who are going to be participating in the process. So I will find out for you exactly why, but we did try and address that.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Okay.
I have a question.
Yes, Brian.
So I know in the past there have been, well, I guess, how do you determine the scope of the long range facilities plan update? How deep to go in this update? Because I know that has been a concern brought up before. Well, there's a correlation between how much planning you do and how much it costs. And so how do we calibrate around that?
Well, one of the things that we took into account was we looked at what we had already had, what we had already had evaluated. So we already knew that, all the fire life safety items were kind of earmarked and identified. But we also went through and said, okay, of this work that has been identified, what is now going to be completed? And what can we now take off the list? Can we scrub this list and take this stuff and put it over to the side? And then whatever's left over, we then can say, okay, this still is a priority. This still has to be done. And then the other thing that we looked at is, yes, we're having this work done, but if this new master plan is looking at another 10-year window, the work that's being done is going to be 5-10 years old by the time this new plan comes to fruition or implementation. So how do we incorporate long-term maintenance and operations, long-term support and planning. And so we had in the RFP, we asked whatever consultant to respond how they would go about strategically looking at that for us and creating timelines for us to then be able to say, hey, it's gonna take X amount of time, which means we're probably going to have X amount of dollars associated with this time. And so once we have that information back from them, then we can then sit down with, you know, our collective group to then look at how we begin to prioritize and identify, you know, needs based on, you know, supportive program, you know, fire life safety, looking at our, you know, there's just all these other things that go into it, but we'll identify that and consolidate and sort of massage what comes back from these proposals and then move forward. And of course, we will bring that information to you all for discussion once we have it.
Gotcha. One other follow, is there any expectation around timeline in the RFP, like their proposal to have a particular timeline in mind for completing the update?
Well, best practices for a district of our size and for the volume of work that we anticipate, it'll probably take anywhere from 3 to 5 months for them to finish their analysis and create the report that we would be able to utilize. We looked at the last report and I believe they spent almost a full year producing that information. So, and since it's an update, I figure it should take half the time, but we'll see. We'll see.
I think that 5 months, I think, would be fantastic. It would surprise me if it was more complex than that.
Oh, it probably will be, but you know, I'm always the optimist.
Are there any other questions about this item?
Yes, Liz.
So when we look at a long-range facility plan, you know, usually it kind of projects what the costs might be for certain necessary maintenance and or improvements to a site. You know, we're currently still have a couple more series on our current bond. And we're still waiting on money to come back from the state on what we've spent so far. Will the analysis have any sort of financial projections on state matches and, you know, future
The
bond
goal is to
capacity?
have them actually do that analysis as well and give us an idea of what our opportunities will be when that time comes. We know the cycle of how the state runs, so of course that's not going to change, but the real driver is going to be what our needs analysis comes back at and where we fall within that window of, hey, here's this huge nugget that we have to sort of shave and create opportunity from, and here's where we are, because you know our enrollment will determine what that looks like. Hopefully we're not in another pandemic in another year. That's going to have bearing on, you know, what we do and how we do it. And then, you know, there's just a lot of unknowns, but the long range facilities master plan will give us a very high level estimate or rough order magnitude estimate for us to go by as a guide. But then we then have to take that information and kind of, you know, slice up the pie to say, hey, we're going to take this piece and move with it, and then drill down further and develop, you know, full scopes of work and really apply real funding analysis to it with real dollars and cents in real time. So.
Henry, would you like to ask a question?
Yes, I do. Hi. I was wondering, is there a way that teachers can provide feedback for this long range plan also, because the teachers know exactly, like in each classroom, what needs to be done, what can, hopefully what they can be done. Is there a way that teachers can provide that feedback either to the
Absolutely.
or to
Absolutely.
what would be the best way to do that? Would they
Absolutely. So as after we have chosen which consultant team will actually provide the support services to get this report done, one of the things that they're going to be required to do is actually meet with each one of the sites and actually meet with the teachers and have an opportunity for you all to, basically drill down with them and create your, I don't want to call it a wish list, but your priorities, kind of sit down with them and say, hey, these are the things that are priorities for us. These are the things that we think that we need and want and must have. And they're going to then take that data and incorporate it into the report and do a consensus district-wide as to what those needs look like. So you guys will definitely have an opportunity to have that conversation and be heard.
Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh.
All right. If there are no further questions, we can move on to the next item.
Okay, the next item is, so last month, yeah, I guess it was last month. Last month, we had a workshop that we did with the board where we discussed design bid build versus leaseback. So as you guys know, our current modernization programs have a delivery method, what we call delivery methods of leaseback. And at the time that the decision was made to use that, that was probably the most expedient way for the district to accelerate moving forward with the modernizations and consolidations for the middle school. Of course, we had no idea that we would be where we are today. And because there's been market changes, schedule changes, regulatory review changes and timelines, and sort of all these exterior influences on our projects, I've made a recommendation to them that we look at changing our delivery method so that it now will work for the current conditions that we're in and will still provide us the highest and best use and benefit of the monies that we have available to finish the projects that we have. And so I provided I guess a presentation with our legal counsel, DWK, and Deidre Sakai, who's our resident construction expert attorney. And we went through the pros and cons of kind of the two different methods and why we are recommending us be, having the ability to use a different option so that we can always kind of maintain our advantage in utilizing our dollars the best way that we can. And so I just wanted to provide that to you all and let you guys know that, that was something that we did. And we will be going back because the board did request additional information. And so we're going to gather that and come back with additional information for them to review and continue the discussion. So are there any questions on that? Liz, looks like.
I guess I was already unmuted. So you mentioned leaseback on the agenda. It's sale leaseback. Is that one and the same?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And with the OPSC, is the leaseback part of the LPP, the lease program? I forget what the LPP stands for, but you have like the SFP where you have new construction and modernization, and then there's this other category called LPP, which has to do with leases. Is that?
Unfortunately, I'm not familiar with that acronym, so I apologize that I can't answer that question for you, but I will find out and get back to you on that.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
No problem. I tried to Google it, and I don't know, it gets into the, I think Google is
there's so many
accustomed to those
acronyms
kinds of
that
searches.
they all just kind of blend together after a while.
Yeah, right.
So the next item on my staff update is the finance and budget breakdown for the Thornton Junior High School project.
Before we move on to the next item, I wanted to,
Sure.
well, I had a question.
Sure.
Just to make sure I understand. Did you say your recommendation was to use DesignBidBuild or to change the parameters around which we choose, DesignBidBuild or sale leaseback?
The intention is for us to be given the opportunity to use the best delivery method that's going to deliver the project on time and on budget for us. So the goal is not to be constrained with only using one delivery method, but to be given the opportunity to use others that will yield us the same outcome. So yes, we want to look at being given the opportunity to do something different.
Okay, part of the reason I asked is my previous understanding was that those were, that both of those delivery options were being used, and perhaps leaseback more so on some of these bigger projects like the middle schools.
I'm still in the process of understanding that, but the question has been asked, and we are definitely vetting all opportunities for us to deliver these projects so that they stay within budget and on time.
Okay. Are there any other questions on this item? Pone.
Yeah, so I had a question. This is kind of follow up to your comment, Brian. Is more of, I understand the delivery method. Does your team have the expertise or knowledge to do what you guys are anticipating doing other than your typical design bid build?
Absolutely. Okay. So I know that I personally have used all methods of delivery in the last 30 years that I've been doing this. And the Vanner team, who are our program managers, they have a wealth of experience and knowledge. And Gerald, I'll let you speak to that.
Yeah, so I personally have about 20 years, feels funny to say that now, experience in primarily design, build, and design bid build delivery on heavy civil construction, as well as K through 12, as well as colleges, all public works. So, and our team as well has combined years of experience on design, bid, build. I think one of the things that happens, and sometimes we confuse this, best practice delivery methods change with the market. And I think, the leaseback method served the district at a time when that was probably the best way to go because of the market. As the market changes, so too should some of your strategies and how you procure to get the best dollar for dollar. So, and I think the market is as such right now where design build and design bid build delivery methods are probably some of the better delivery methods to get the district the best value that it can. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, yes. I just wanted to make sure. I mean, we're going through that similar scenario up in the county, and I'm just trying to make sure that there's expertise to handle what's forthcoming, whichever method you do.
Absolutely.
Okay.
That's fair. That's a fair concern.
Absolutely.
Can I ask one follow-up, and apologies if you already mentioned this, but what are the top 2 or 3 things that have changed in the market?
So for one thing, COVID-19 has caused our contractors to be extremely hungry. And when I say they're extremely hungry, because the shelter in place lasted for such a very long time, there are a lot of workforces and folks associated with those workforces on projects that were laid off. And so now that people are slowly coming back to work, the bottom line has been impacted by a lot of these businesses. So they are going after larger contractors are coming after projects that they traditionally would not even look at. So for instance, I use Washington High School Theater project as an example. That's a $5 million project. We had 18 contractors show up for a $5 million project to bid at a pre-bid walk. We received 9 proposals on a $5 million job. One of those contractors is a contractor who, 5 years ago, I guess we had another project. In fact, I think American High School, or either American or Mission San Jose, the pool project, they snubbed their nose up and said, oh yeah, we're not even looking at that. And those projects are 3 times the size of this one. So what's happening is that contractors who traditionally wouldn't bid on smaller jobs are now bidding on them because the pickings are slim. And so the numbers are coming in quite competitive because of the market, the nature of what's going on in the market right now. The other thing that's happening is that because the Bay Area is such a highly concentrated metropolis in terms of the amount of work and the type of work that's going on. So a few years ago, we had the Google campus going up. We had Apple doing expansion. We had, I think, 7 hospital expansions going on at one time. And I believe that, city of San Francisco and all the small cities around the Bay Area, we had a lot of public works going on. Those projects are now sunsetting and closing out. So what does that mean? It means that those 10-year projects are no longer out there. So you have an influx of all these available vendors who now need to get more work. So with that, we're seeing a lot more competition and competitiveness in trying to vie for the smaller projects that we have. And so that's turning into projects are coming in under budget. Projects are coming in on budget at the time of bid, whereas before, we struggled to get people to respond to our projects because, they had all this other work going on. So why would they come to Fremont for a $25 million project when they've got $100 million in San Jose that they're working on right now? So it's just, as Gerald said, the nature of the industry has changed. And so we just want to have the ability to change with it as well. And one of the things that has been impactful over the last 3 months is that we are really tightening our control over our design teams and really scrutinizing, are you designing to bid? Are you designing to budget? And are you truly addressing what scopes of work we have identified that we deem to be important? And if they can't answer that, then they have to sharpen their pencil and go back to the table. Whereas previously, and this is just me in observation, any change that, that wasn't in my contract, they actually would be paid to correct their mistakes. We're not doing that anymore. We're not allowing that to happen. And so it's shifting the way in which vendors are going to be engaging with Fremont. So, and I think it's for the better because we started to see, a positive yield in some of the projects that we do have out to bid right now. So we're very excited about that.
If I could just follow up on that for a second, it is now, yes, turned into a seller's market. And also starting from the top down, starting from Kelly down, we are starting to scrutinize our consultants more in terms of the work that they give us. We're starting to say no more. When we get bills for correcting work that should have come right the first time, we're sending it back. Those kinds of things. And it disturbs a comfort zone that folks have here, but we think that's the best way to get the district the value that we think that they deserve. I shouldn't have to pay you to correct something or do something twice, right? We paid you good money the first time and you didn't give me full value for what we paid. And so that's been kind of our position. It starts with Kelly, kind of flows down. And that's part of the reason why we authorized or asked the board to authorize a new pool of not just CM firms, but also architects, because we want to send the message that if you're not giving us, a dollar's value for a dollar's payment, then we're going to start looking to other folks.
No, thanks. Thank you. If there are no further questions on this topic, I will turn the gavel back over to Antonio, who's rejoined us. And we can move on to, we're about 30 minutes into this topic, a 50-minute topic, and are on 5D.
Thank you so much, Brian. It was wonderful to just listen. All right, so we are now moving to the finance budgeting of the Thornton Junior High project. Go ahead, Kelly.
So I'm sure most of you all monitored or watched the last board meeting. So the CBOC has sent a letter to the Board of Trustees just expressing their concern and their interest in making sure that the bond dollars were being scrutinized and evaluated properly. The main concern that they had brought to the board's attention was the contingency budget and programmed contingency specifically.
So, Kelly, just 1 second. Is that the Thornton Junior High project?
Yes. Yes.
Oh, okay, got it. Thank you.
So Thornton Junior High project, on August 24th, the board approved a budget increase of $16.5 million. That $16.5 million came from the program contingency budget for the Measure E program. In doing so, and assigning that 16.5 million, reduced the available funds in the program contingency to a little over $3 million. And so the CBOC was very concerned because they know that we have, projects that are still outstanding, projects that are still underway in getting started. And they wanted to express their concern that, hey, wait a minute, does this mean that these other projects are going to be in jeopardy of either, not having full financing available or not having a reserve for us to be able to accomplish the projects as we had planned? And so I responded to that letter as well as my team, and we met with the CBOC on Monday and actually reviewed in detail the breakdown of the Thornton project, and we identified how that $16.5 million was allocated, and also reviewed how the program budget and the project budgets have reserve funds built in each one of the projects for continuation of construction. And so, excuse me, if you guys, you can let me know if you want to see this, but I brought with me today the copy of the letter that we responded to the CBOC, as well as the financial breakdown that was presented to the board on August 24th, identifying how that $16.5 million was allocated and will be spent for project completion at Thornton. One of the other concerns that was raised is they were wondering how we are going to mitigate risk or look at how, moving forward with the projects that we still have at Centerville and Hopkins and Kennedy, and some of our Group 1 projects, how are we going to do that? And one of the things that we talked about and that we have identified in this letter are process and procedures that we have already implemented that will allow us to have control over how funds are being spent, as well as monitoring and maintaining scope creep. And so for those of you that don't know, scope creep is when you've already bid the project, the contractor's on board, they have a specific scope of work that they're supposed to deliver. But as the project gets going and you're under construction, there are these, oh, by the way, we want blah, 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 that wasn't included in the original scope of work. And that gets added and added and added. And the next thing you know, you have all these add-ons that basically blow your budget totally out of the water, and you're not able to finish or accomplish what your original goal was because you've added all of these extras that are probably needed, but were not budgeted for in the original execution of the work. So as we're moving forward to mitigate our risk, as I had shared with the CBOC, we have an exhaustive, and I say exhaustive because we're spending a lot of time that wasn't necessarily spent before in really reviewing the scopes of work and meeting with our school sites to make sure they fully understand, hey, this is the scope of work that your project has been budgeted for. Have we covered everything that you need for you to function to actually execute programmatic requirements for you to do your job in your classroom? That is something that we found out that had not been done before. And because we have been doing it through the Thornton, the Centerville, and the Hopkins projects, we have a much better idea and realistic perspective of what it is that we have to spend for these projects. And the other thing, because the nature of the construction industry has changed, we are now realizing estimates that are within 2 to 3% of our rough order of magnitude estimates that were created almost 2 years ago. So we're super excited about that, because what that means is we fully identified and vetted what the needs are of the site, but we're also meeting our have-tos of whatever is required by DSA and the California Department of Education for us to meet our requirements as a school district to upgrade and maintain that facility so that it's usable for the occupants of the facility. So I say this, long story short, we had a really good meeting. I was able to identify and answer questions. The $16.5 million is not just disappearing and poof into the sky. It's actually going to be allocated very specifically to specific tasks that need to be completed for the project. And so if you guys want to see that, I'd be happy to share that information with you guys as well.
Yeah, if you could share it with the committee on BCC after
Sure.
this meeting, we'd appreciate it.
Okay.
Does anybody
So
have any? Oh, you mean you're going to share it now? Oh, okay.
Yeah. Did you not want me to do it right now? I can not do it if you don't want
No,
me to.
I meant after the meeting for,
okay.
for education.
Okay. Well, I actually wasn't going to share the whole meeting. I just wanted to take you guys to the financial breakdown, which is
Okay,
this,
great. And then
here's
after
our.
that, I'll take Brian. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I said after that, I'll take Brian. Go ahead.
Okay. So for Thornton, the specific question was asked, where is the 16.5 going? So what we've done here, we've identified the actual project, the total project budget prior to August 20th was $76,002,985. Here now is the inclusion of the $16.5 million, which brings the new project budget to $92,473,823,000. The variance here is the identification of where all of those dollars are being allocated. And as you can see, the bulk of the money is directly going into the construction pot. And the other numbers that are identified are specific to these particular activities that are required to support the construction of the project. And here, if you look at line H, we have a very healthy contingency that we have assigned for the project that went from $4,500,026.757 up to $5,644,912. So that is where when we talk about contingency, that's our safety net that we have for the project that we can draw from in the event something unforeseen happens, that we can then go ahead and address it in real time without, hey, I still have to go to the board and get approval, but at least I know that I have the funds available to address the problem based on the budget that I have listed here. And so, oh, excuse me. So this is, and this particular setup that you all see in terms of how this is broken out, every single project that we have in our bond program has a spreadsheet and a budget breakdown like this. So at any given time, you guys can call us and say, hey, I want to see what the project budget is for Centerville, or I want to see what the project budget is for Walters, or I want to see, you know, any of the schools that are in the program have this particular setup that you can identify where those funds are being spent. So with that, are there any questions before I take this, excuse me, back down?
Yeah, go ahead, Brian. And then I have a follow-up after that.
Okay.
So, well, first off, thank you for putting this on the agenda. I think this continues the commitment to transparency. And I think sharing the CBOC's letter and your response, Kelly, with FAC would be very educational for us all. Obviously, I am a part of the CBOC, so I'm intimately familiar with this already. I guess the question I had was more for the committee to understand, you know, how much interest there is in understanding this in the bond program. And so, and Antonio, you're welcome to facilitate that any way you would, but it's got to, you can go really deep into this. I have gone really deep, but we want to be smart about how we use our time here as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
I think that's a great question, and I would connect both the next meeting topics as well as the board member direction on the overloading project to kind of define what we want this year to look like, and then probably use those 2 points together to fit in this scope. Because my understanding of our responsibilities and duties as a committee, we oversee not just we both Measure E projects as well as non-Measure E projects, whereas I think CBOC only looks at Measure E projects. So I imagine it would be within our scope for sure, but I would always appreciate board direction. My follow-up, is that satisfactory, Brian?
Oh, very much so. Thank you.
My follow-up question is, it seems like we're nearing towards the tail end of the Measure E bond. Is that typical to exhaust the bond contingency and start funneling it into and only having project contingencies over the course of the lifespan of a bond? Or
Gerald, did you want to try and answer that, or you want me to take that?
Yeah, I'll give it a whirl there. Good question, actually. And you know, the answer is it really depends. Depends on a lot of factors. Each program, Antonio, just like each project, is going to have a different personality and a different kind of identity, right? And what you might find at one site, in particular to K through 12, what you might find at one site, you won't find at another site. And the team, the contractor that you have at one site, you won't have at another site. So it really just depends. It also depends on a lot of the upfront work that was done, Antonio, like the drawings and how tight they were. When you go out to bid, I mean, the tighter the drawings are when you go out to bid, typically the smoother the project is going to be. So there's a lot of variables that come into play, and I'm certainly not trying to obfuscate your question. It really just depends on a particular program and a particular project. In our case, you know, I haven't been here that long, so you know, I don't want to throw anyone under the bus or make someone look bad, but I think now what we're seeing is that the drawings could be a little bit tighter before we go out on the street with it. And so we're doing some things to make sure that that happens. I think we're managing it more effectively to prevent some things, but there's still just some things that you can't avoid, like unforeseen site conditions or what have you. that can upend some of your budgets, whether it be program contingency or project contingency. So I hope I answered that.
If I may follow up.
Sure.
So I imagine so when you have a bond of certain amount of dollars, you assign a contingency for that bond of a certain percentage. As you start to complete all the projects, at some point you have to do something with that contingency fund. I guess my question is, did we use that contingency fund too early? Is that what the possible issue is? Or did we use it at the appropriate time, as is the case for all bonds as they start getting to the tail end? That's
we used it for the things that it was supposed to be used for. That's for sure. But also too, it is going to get smaller as you get towards the end of the bond, just like your design contingency will start to get smaller toward the end of design. So yes, and yes, we use it appropriately, and it is supposed to shrink as you get towards the end of the program.
Thank you. And I have Trustee Crosby and then Brian.
Thank you. So there is a portion of it that's assigned every year to projects. So we know certain ones are at the end, and so a percentage would be assigned at the very beginning per year for projects based on what we anticipate the growth would be. Normally that's totally enough money, but with trade embargoes, and not only have we had fires, but we've had hurricanes, we've had tornadoes across the United States, which starts to impact steel cost and lumber cost in ways that when we started out, we had when we were asking people to support the contingency, they said, oh, that's crazy amounts of money. But really, it isn't, given all that we've faced. The fact that we've done as well as we have is kind of stunning.
Well, and just to give you guys a sort of a snapshot, we ran through some scenarios on Friday. Every Friday I meet with Marcus Battle and our finance team, and we look at, kind of where we are in real time with all of our projects. And, what have I spent this week, and what are we looking at for this month, and how can I forecast and know, kind of fast forward 6 months from now, 30, 60, 90 days, what is my spend plan going to look like? And so one of the things that we are very appreciative of and glad, Vanner actually applied a higher escalation factor to the budgets when they developed these projects 2 or 3 years ago. And we found some documentation where there was a note that said, hey, this is, this escalation is excessively high, but their justification for it was, hey, we're moving into unknown territory. The Bay Area is in a boom right now, and we need to make sure we account for that anticipated normal escalation. But because we are moving at an accelerated pace and trying to do high volumes of work over a short period of time, we're going to add a little extra in there. And my gosh, I'm so appreciative that they did that, because we're spot on in terms of what our escalation factor has been and what it's trending towards us in the process of completing these projects. So I'm just really appreciative that they did that. And I'm holding on to those dollars, with my teeth, to make sure that, we make them go as far as we possibly can, because as you said, we are in uncharted territory, and this is definitely unknown waters for most of us in how we're navigating through this. But I think, my personal opinion, as well as our analysis, that this bond, we should be okay. And as we are moving through the completion of the ones that are still on the table, with the measures and procedures that we're putting in place, I think that we'll realize, success on the remaining projects that we have in front of us, because we are really closely paying attention and monitoring and what we call controlling in the industry, how our progress is going to be moving forward.
Right, and to
if I-
remind the committee, if just real quick, Gerald, because we have 2 minutes or a minute and a half. I think this, just to confirm, Kelly, did this discussion also cover the update of the recent bond report?
Yes, it does.
Okay, great. And then, so let me go to Brian, Gerald, real quick, and then
Okay.
we'll turn to you to cap off this item. I assume he has a question, so I'll let you all answer it.
Actually, I wanted to share a statement, both for myself, but I think it covers the spirit of what CVOC is trying to do. I think in the same spirit that Kelly and staff have been asking deeper questions, our concern was raised when we saw the Thornton project. And from an outsider's point of view, you could take a look at 2 out of our 3 middle school projects have come in significantly above budget. And so, and we have no or very small program contingency remaining. So really the core of it was not necessarily questioning the decisions that were made in the past, but more what are we doing now to really make sure we can deliver the remaining middle school projects with the bond funds we have remaining. And so I think that's the spirit of, and I think both what's shared tonight and then the letters provided, the response to CVOC answers a lot of that. So I just wanted to provide that context.
Thank you, Brian.
And Gerald, do you want to wrap us up?
Yeah, I was just gonna, what Trustee Crosby had mentioned, that we had massive inflation in 2018. And you have to keep in mind when your and we who could account for that? Who could have forecasted that? When your square footage goes up in housing, it goes up in construction as well. So if you had something at $500 per square foot, you projected it might go to $700 per square foot, and then it turns out to be $900 per square foot. It's like, well, okay, but I would advise that keep in mind that as the square footage goes up in housing, it goes up in construction as well.
All right, thank you very much. And given that we removed the solar panel installation update, we will move to the liaison reports and discussion. It's only 2 minutes. The facility subtask force, that was the subtask force that was created in the run up to coming back to campuses. I don't believe it has restarted. So I think moving forward, I'll eliminate it unless I hear otherwise. Could I get a report from the MIP plus SDI members?
Sharon, I'll start. We met one time and we discussed 2 short-term goals for the group. One being the Mandarin, 2 classrooms added to Azaveda, and how we're going to sustain those classrooms, considering Azaveda has no space available. And the second was the unification of the immersion program. Kelly did present at that meeting so that the group had an idea of facilities. And I know that Kelly is continuing to collect data from each school site to see what the real space available is. So I anticipate at the next meeting, we'll be talking about who could house the program, if there is a site that could house the program, maintaining the homeschool students at each site. So that's the next discussion. And the next meeting is on the Monday, October 18th or 19th, I believe. Sharon, did I miss anything?
It's the 19th.
No, you got it all. It's the 19th of Monday, the 19th. But no, you covered it all. That is what occurred during that meeting.
As a query, is there a plan at some point for this joint committee to present their recommendations on facility use to the FAC before it goes to the board? My question is motivated by just giving it more opportunities for it to be vetted before making its way to the board.
Antonio, I'll just answer for Christy because she's not here, but she and I do plan on collaborating and preparing something to present to the FAC for your review and edification. So
Thank you. I appreciate that.
And that will be prior to, I believe that she said that we were going to present at the November board meeting. Am I correct with that? So we would have to make sure that it was at the next meeting.
You know, I'm not sure. I do have a meeting with her on Friday, so I can confirm.
Okay.
I think that's what she was targeting, but it depends on how far we get. We're meeting virtually almost every other week so that we can have some solutions to offer.
Great. So that would be, so our next meeting would be November 4th. I imagine you're talking about the board meeting of the, what is it? The 11th? Or would it be a later one? Maybe the 25th?
No, I don't think, no. It'll be no, it won't be the 11th. The 11th is a Veterans Day.
Okay.
I'm not sure if they're holding it on the 18th or if they're holding it on another day the week.
I believe it's on the 18th, Sharon.
Yeah, I think so. I think they're going to do it on the 3rd week.
Okay, great. I look forward to that. All right, moving to the next item is receiving board member direction on the overloading project. I do want to note that part of the reason why much of this, the agenda was presentation focused as opposed to action focused was we've hit this, step in the committee where we are expecting, members to reapply. And as a result, the committee is smaller than it normally is. So I would hope within the next few, before the next meeting, we will have new committee members or returning committee members. But on this point, this is where I would ask for a discussion of both the wider committee, but also requesting direction from the board members as to, setting certain timing expectations on restarting, the potential overloading project. I know that we were, essentially working on this project and then COVID hit and we put a pause on that because there was so much at play, and we didn't, if you recall, there was a change in the demographer. The numbers changed as well. Our trends changed. And so we decided to put a pause on addressing overloading. And so potentially solutions look a bit different now than they did before. We're going to have to evaluate that at the subcommittee level. But I was hoping to get direction from the board members on what the expectations are and what they would like to see. Trustee Jones.
Just since this is a big issue and there are only 2 board members here, I honestly think that this may need to go to the full board to get direction, because so much has changed since that project started, that I honestly think you probably need more direction from all of us and not just 2 of us. And I don't know how quickly we can get that agendized. But that's where I land right now.
And to be clear, I'm completely aware that the board, gives direction as a board and not in terms of members. Really, I was asking for kind of a sample of timing or, maybe direction on continue to pause, and then we'll wait, that kind of direction, not, these are the solutions that I want you to look into. But I respect that response. Trustee Crosby, do you have anything to share?
Yeah, I think it probably makes sense for us to seek input, because I don't know, at least before the next time we meet, whether it makes sense for this to, get agendized to have a further discussion. There's a lot of moving parts right now.
Absolutely. So I think if there's no other member discussion on this, then maybe we could spend a bit more time on thoughts on future meeting topics. Oh, go ahead, Brian.
I was trying to
and
throw out a thought and a question. I think what happens with the long range facilities plan, this and the long range facilities plan are very intertwined, right? Because if we want to make adjustments to how we're using our school sites, that will impact the long range facilities plan greatly, right? So we want those schedules to come together. In fact, actually, I'd say you'd want to have those ideas before you go into your long range facilities planning, if it's going to, you know, especially if we're talking about boundary changes, for example. And then I think one of the questions would be, what is the kind of information the board would need to be able to provide better direction to us and staff? It may be a useful conversation as well.
Sorry, Liz, then Trustee Crosby, then Judy, and we have 7 minutes.
Okay. Well, I myself try to follow what the state is doing with our projects on the DGS website. And, you know, we have like 4 projects from our bond that are in this PM complete status, which shows real dollars and what the state match is going to be. And yet we haven't had an apportionment yet. And it takes many, many months, it seems, between, you know, having your application completed, and it's like in a workload list that gradually gets moved up, and you know, I go through pages of schools and school districts and their projects, and I see lots of LA Unified, and you know, and it's just so I just don't see anything from Fremont coming up. And I'm the next meeting is October 28th, and I'm wondering, could that be our lucky month for an apportionment? I'd like to understand, you know, why it takes so long for this to happen. It's been literally like years. And, you know, having a state match, you know, could really make a difference for future planning outside of our current bond. I'm on another committee, you know, for the site disposition, and, you know, it makes a difference knowing where is the money coming from, you know. So anyway, as a topic, it would be nice to kind of understand this state match problem.
Thank you, Liz. Trustee Crosby.
Thank you. I think that's really a really important point, Liz, and you know, you're probably one of the most knowledgeable in this area around this and the challenges associated. And one of the big problems is that the state of California passed a very big state bond and has not hired people appropriately to manage that bond. And so they're understaffed. And then add on top of it, you know, a pandemic, it hasn't helped a whole lot. But I think that you have a really good point, and that might actually be a really good topic to have on the agenda, to have Kelly give an idea of what funds we have received and what funds we're anticipating, because that might be some good background information. To Brian's point, I think that probably the facilities plan and the other discussion probably need to go hand in hand. If we know what's happened at sites, what sites feel they still need, then we may have a better idea of how to move forward with any future development.
Thank you. Judy?
So just back to future meeting topics, the overload situation continues to be a concern from many of us
Just to be clear, are you talking about future meeting topics? Because if so, then we can, assuming you were the last in line, or Trustee Crosby was the last in line, We were still discussing the board member direction on the overloading project, I thought.
Okay, I'm sorry. Then
And
I'll
then we're
wait
about to
until
go there.
future meetings. Okay.
Is there anyone else? We have 2 minutes and 58 seconds. Okay, go ahead, Judy. We're now in thoughts on future meeting topics.
Just as a site administrator and looking at the overload situation and the fluctuation of students at each site. And one of the reasons, quite frankly, why I joined this committee was to look at potential solutions to the overloads in. So I would like to see that continue to be a topic on future meeting agendas.
I think I think at least from 2 of the board members, we are waiting for some firmer direction from the board to discuss that. That was the discussion on the overloading project. If I accurately.
Antonio, can I just
ahead,
add
Kelly.
a comment to Judy's comments on the overload?
Yeah.
So one of the things that our facilities department is doing right now is actually verifying and gathering current data for all the school sites. So we're taking a comparison and verifying what was given to us for the capacity report for last year and actually looking at what their current real-time loads are right now for each site. And so I'm hoping to have that sort of 2-column comparison available for us within the next month or so, because I believe that our staff person is about 80, almost 90% complete with gathering that data from all the school sites. And I think once you all have that, it will help to frame the discussion that you want to have, because it's hard to have it when you don't have data in front of you to sort of put a framework around what the problem is. So we'll be sharing that at the SIP and MIP meeting on the 19th. And so I'll be happy to share that information when we meet again as well.
Kelly, can I ask a question about that? Because there was a little confusion about what data you were actually asking administrators to collect. I, having been a member of this committee, gave information per 2021 session, and then I back that said, no, we were actually looking for 1920 information. So I want to make sure that you're getting current information for the current school year. And I talked to a couple principals about that, and they felt the same way.
We're actually asking for both. And I did have a conversation with Gina to make sure that she clarified with you all exactly what we were looking for. So we actually want both. You guys already gave us the 1819 or 1920. I'm sorry. But we're finding that a lot of that data was incorrect. And so we're going back and just asking for verification of that. And then we're also asking for your current data of what your current 2021 loads are. And then we'll do a comparison against the 2.
Okay, good. Thank you.
And Trustee Crosby. Brian.
I was building on that. I think it would be great if the kind of the demographic / overloading subcommittee could get that data and help prepare it for presentation to FAC, because I think that would be I think that could be very, very helpful for making it most productive when we bring it to FAC. And it plays into the Mandarin and Spanish immersion program plans. It plays into, overloads. And I think one of the core questions, in addition to what Kelly mentioned, which I think is spot on, we need to have a picture. What's the current picture look like? Well, what does the picture look like when we have the middle schools, right? Because we're adding all this capacity. That should have a dramatic impact. And that's something we can at least begin to model with that data.
And Brian, that's something that we are also beginning to track as well, because based on our last conversation that we had at the last meeting where you guys wanted to know, hey, where are we going to have vacancies? We've started to compile a it's almost like a bell curve where you can see the influx of students go up and then down, and you can then identify on a site-by-site basis where you have availabilities. And so hopefully we'll have that done and ready pretty soon as well, just to have a snapshot to say, hey, this is what we can anticipate. But of course, until we actually do the conversion, we don't really know what our real numbers will be, but we can anticipate, you know, based on this other set of data that we get.
In line with that request, what would the timing be, given that you have this feedback from principals and you're potentially going to need to confirm data that you've already received, and you're going to receive new data? When would you expect to potentially have all that information back to create an updated capacity report? I know you mentioned the percentage complete, but timing would be helpful.
The goal is to have the updated capacity report ready in November, so that we can actually present it either to board in November or for an update in December. And as I said, the other committees want to utilize some of this information in their decision-making process. So we're going to try and make it as comprehensive as possible, and make sure we identify our assumptions very clearly if we're not able to have 100% of the data.
So the first version of that data is planned for the SIP MIP meeting on October 19th, I thought is what I heard. So I'd say that's the first release of the data.
Correct.
So if in between that, it could be released to at least that subcommittee of the FAC, that would be appreciated. We like to poke holes in data, so that would give us an opportunity before it made its way to the board in November to try to do that. The other thing I wanted to bring to the attention of the committee, in my monthly review of FAC's bylaws, I noticed that we should be producing or I should be producing and coordinating a schedule for committee members to go to school board meetings and then make statements during oral communication as directed by the committee, and then report back to the committee on pertinent issues that come before the board. So don't be surprised when I, agendize that, and then we start potentially taking names of, like, who's going to take this meeting, who's going to look at this agenda item, and kind of develop a strategy around that at our November meeting. So outside of that, seeing no one else in the queue, and also given that we've exhausted time on future meeting topics, I will now adjourn the meeting. Thank you very much, everybody, and have a good evening.
Thank you.